most important part of what my life is about, one of the most important things. And I tend to want to take care of everybody, sometimes to the point of doing too much sometimes and everything. But when my mom got sick, it was just a natural thing for me to become her main caregiver. I remember very much how frustrated and scared I was when she got the diagnosis of Parkinson's and dementia. I felt like I was in it by myself. She lived in my home with me and everything. And I'll never forget the day, one day I was sitting at my sister's house on a bar stool in her kitchen, and I was crying, saying, I don't know how in the world I'm going to do this, working full time and the kids and everything. And I remember my sister reaching over and touching my hand and saying, you are not in this by yourself. And I cannot begin to explain to you how good that made me feel, just that one gesture, to know that they had my back and they were going to help me take care of Mom. I had 7 brothers and sisters, and every one of them helped with what they could do, whatever, especially the girls. In fact, we even pulled in our children who were girls in college or high school who helped in caregiving. I've been a volunteer with Alzheimer's Services for 20 plus years. I'm an ex-board member. I still sit on the education committee and also on the respite advisory board, still participating in that. The sandwich generation, that term was coined in 2006. I had no earthly idea that there was such a generation until I started doing this talk. Webster had it in its dictionary and not until 2006. 11 million Americans belong to this generation, and that's ages of 40 to 65. It could even be a little bit older in that people are living longer. So if you have parents in their 90s and you're in your 70s, part of that sandwich generation with taking care of grandchildren and everything else, you could be still part of that sandwich generation. It's assisting both older children and elderly parents with emotional and financial support, kind of burning the candle at both ends. 15% of the sandwich generation is providing support for their older children and their elderly parents. And you've become an unpaid caregiver. This has been one of the rising problems in this generation. It's a rising financial burden to all of middle-age America. The kids, the older children, have student loan debt, credit card debt. They're not able to be out on their own, so they come back to live with you, and you're supporting them, and then all of a sudden, you have to take care of your elderly parents, and you still have children at home, you work full-time, and a husband. Half of the sandwich generation delays in getting help. Is this a failure? Yes, because help is there. And that's what we're going to talk about today. If you notice in the picture, there is the person being in the sandwich. The bread on one side is the elderly parents. On the other side is your husband, your children, your co-workers, and everything. Squeezing the bread with everything they have. Well, today we're going to talk about what makes that cushion, what makes the lettuce, the tomatoes, the pickles, and the cheese. I want Jamie to talk to y'all because she is now in that sandwich generation. She didn't even realize that there was a sandwich generation, but she's right in the throes of it. So I wanted her today to tell you her story. Jamie?
Hello, I'm Jamie. I'm 41, have 4 children. Very close in age. We had our first 2, my husband and I, 14 months apart, and shortly after found out that we were expecting twins. So needless to say, they're very close in age. At one time we had 4 of them in diapers, and not much has really changed now. They're 14, 13, and 11, just a lot more responsibility. Thankfully, when they were born and younger, my parents helped me out a ton, pretty much every single day. A little bit of background. My mom was diagnosed with gallbladder cancer in 2017 and lost her battle after 10 months. Shortly after her diagnosis, I found myself becoming her caregiver. Well, with the help of my aunts and my dad, we would frequently go to Houston to help her But I was also still a wife, a mom, and I'm also a nurse. This was the start of me, I guess, fitting right into this generation. I didn't even realize that there was such a thing as this, but it's a feeling of being extremely overwhelmed and stressed. At first, I thought, I can do all of this because I was just used to doing everything on my own. Well, I quickly realized that I couldn't. And if not taking care of myself, um, results in not being good for anyone, including, your children, your parents, your husband, your job, and the list goes on. I can remember one of my friends asking, if she could help me with my kids after school on the days we were in Houston. It was hard to accept help, but as soon as I did, things quickly got easier. Shortly after my mom passed away, my dad's health started to decline. He's been chronically ill over the last 3 years. Fortunately, right now, he's doing pretty good, but he still does require care and assistance and attention, of course. So I can easily get trapped. Also, right now, I'm in school getting my master's and becoming a nurse practitioner and graduating in December, which is right around the corner. But I'm trying to juggle the job, school, my kids, my dad. But I can tell you some ways, things that I've done, or me and my husband have done that have seemed to help us out. First of all, I'm very organized, and I think that people in this caregiving role have a sense of organization. Nurses in general, I think, just have good time management and learn how to juggle many situations. But I have a planner. I color code everything for each one of my kids each week, and my dad even has a spot of what needs to be done. Another area is delegation. My friends and I have come up with great carpool situations. I asked my sister-in-laws for help, which I never really would have in the past. Just trying to get my kids where they need to be in the evenings. It truly takes a village. My dad still does help me sometimes too. And when it comes to taking care of my dad, I was kind of labeled the in-charge person, just like my aunt. I think it's kind of being a nurse, and I'm the only daughter in town. But I've learned how to delegate what my siblings need to do. And that way it prevents resentment from happening and the feelings of like, it's not fair to me. And another area is prioritizing what needs to be done and what could wait. Making a list of things that are really important for that day, like what needs to get done and what can wait. I often will look at the laundry or the dishes and I think, I could do those right now, or I could go ride bikes with one of my kids, or, it's just prioritizing so that you can be the best person. Some ways that I take care of me personally, which is considered the lettuce, tomato, pickles, and cheese in the sandwich. When I was planning this talk, I asked my husband, what things do you think that I do for myself? And he laughed and he said, nothing. And I said, well, he's close to right, but I do make some time for myself. I definitely do so that I can be the best version of myself for my kids, him, my dad, and all of my job, everything. So on a daily basis, I learned that waking up at least 20 minutes before my kids is the smart thing to do. Drink my coffee, say my prayers. If not, the morning just does not go well. I learned that early when my kids were younger. So I make sure on my days off that I'm responsible for getting them up, that I do this. I exercise probably 3 to 5 times a week, even if it's just 30 minutes a day. If I exercise, I find that my overall mood is better. So it's a good thing for everyone. Another big thing is not procrastinating and assigning time for each thing that I have to do. So whether it's cleaning or studying or spending time with each particular child. For example, I'm in school and a lot of assignments due. So I make sure I only spend a little bit of time each day on assignments so that I can get it done, feel productive, and then not be so worried or anxious about it later. And then I try to make sure that I've paid enough attention to each one of my children by the end of the day, because it's very easy to get distracted. and before you know it, the day is over. Another big thing for me is sleep and eating well, because sleep is very important. Without enough sleep, I'm definitely worthless, and everything that's going on feels like it's 1,000 times worse with sleep deprivation. I have a bedtime around, every night, and my husband laughs and says it's way too early, but I know that's what I need. I've always been that way. And, again, with prioritizing, making time for my husband, or some of the things I do. I love to go out to dinner with my friends. I talk to my sister every single night before I go to bed. And I talk to a lot of my friends on a daily basis. Like, I like to talk on the phone. Lately, I've been commuting to New Orleans for clinicals a couple times a week. And at first, I kind of dreaded the drive, like, it's just stuff I could be getting other things done. And I don't know, I quickly adjusted to it, and I like it. And I think it's God's way of saying, Jamie, take this 90 minutes a day and focus on yourself. And I can pray, I can listen to the music that I actually like, not what my kids want to listen to. I can call a friend or my aunt or my dad or whoever, or I can just think. But like, back to taking care of dad, sharing the load with siblings or hiring help. His sister needed a little extra income, and we needed help, so we kind of made that work. Fortunately, we could do that. We're in that position to be able to do that and delegate and relying on people for help. So to sum it up, achieving the perfect balance of everything is not really, it's not going to ever be perfect. There's no perfect balance. I think prioritizing faith, those are the things that are very, very important, and knowing what you need to take care of yourself to be good for everyone else that you're responsible for. It's obviously taken some time over the past few years to figure these things out. I kind of have a motto, and a lot of people that know me, I just say we take it one day at a time, because I realize that cherishing the moments, because this is life. Like, every day is part of our life, and the moments go by very fast. So I'm all about just figuring out what I can do to be better and for everybody involved. And that's a little bit about my story. So here's back to.
Thank you, Jamie, very much for sharing. And as Jamie said, it's taken her several years to figure this out. And so we know that this is not something that's easy. Questions to ask yourself. Taking care of me. Always remember the oxygen mask. In the airplane, when the oxygen drops down, they tell you to put it on yourself first before you put it on help anyone else. It's the same thing with taking care of yourself and taking care of others. That if we don't take care of ourselves, then we're going to miss the boat here totally. So what can we control in life? Ourselves. What can we control? Our attitudes, a way of thinking or feeling. Our beliefs, our faith, our trust, our confidence in God and ourselves and others. Our behavior, our way of acting and reacting. And as Jamie said, she's found a way to incorporate some of these into her life. And that is so very important. Oh, not very good at this, guys. Questions to ask yourself. Answer these silently. When I gave this talk originally, it was in a live audience, so everybody kind of shared. But what is your greatest strength? I want you to think, because you'll say, well, gee, I don't know. I mean, I don't, sounds like I'm patting myself on the back. But there's something about you that is your greatest strength. What is the one thing you would change in your life if you could? What are you most grateful for? And do you have a realistic bucket list? Not that you're kicking the bucket anytime soon, but we all need to have something like a bucket list to know that that's attainable and something we can reach for. It might not be able to do that right now, but something in your life later on. Stress, anger, grief, and joy. If I had to think of the 4 things that I went through, my emotions, Jamie also shaking head over here, when what's happened in our lives, what's happened here that we have to change our lives, and that these 4 things were the greatest things that I had to deal with. We are searching for peace of mind so that we don't lose our mind. Remember, peace is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. With peace of mind, we have everything. It means that everything is in its place. Stress, losing control, fear of failure. We have stress about different things in our lives. Usually they're little small things and we stress out about them or whatever. But this is a big one. This is like, this is almost like a hurricane in our lives, caring for our elderly parents, our older children, our husbands, our lives, our children, our wives, our job, everything. The biggest stressor in America is money. It doesn't matter if you have plenty of it or you just have a little bit of it. If you have plenty of it, you're still worrying about, are you doing the right thing for your children? Are you spending the time you need to with your family because you have so much money, you're gone most of the time? So money can be a stressor at any level. But to people who don't have a lot of money, it is a huge stressor. And in today's society, we are in debt a great deal. And if COVID-19 didn't teach us this, that people were overextended at the time and then facing the fact of losing their job or cutting back. So money is always there. Our health and nutrition, as Jamie said, she realized without doing something for herself and taking care of herself, she's of no use to anyone else. So under the health comes our exercise, our seeing the doctor when we need to, eating and sleeping as we should. If we're taking care of someone with dementia and Alzheimer's, we know that there's a possibility that some of this could be hereditary. I live with that idea every day. So I thought I'd tell you that besides the exhaustion and the lower resistance and the fact that your immune system is lowered, you've got to take care of yourself. And some of the nutrition, the idea of the ways to prevent dementia used to be the puzzles, the reading the books, the Sudokus, but that has changed with more research. They realize now how important exercise is, and diet plays a huge part in it also. So I thought I'd talk to y'all a little bit about the 10 top brain foods to try to prevent dementia. Fatty fish, the salmon, is an example. Berries. The darker the berry, the more nutritious, the more antioxidants, and the better and healthier for you. So blueberries, blackberries probably have more than strawberries. Not that strawberries aren't good, but there would be the choice over strawberries. Coffee, who would ever think? Now, not in excess, but your 3 cups a day, something like that. So caffeine is important if you're able to have it. Nuts, extra virgin olive oil, avocados, dark chocolate, Concord grapes. Now, we don't see a whole lot of Concord grapes, but Concord grape juice is available, but it does have a high sugar content, so you want to be careful of that. Turmeric, sage, curry, and pumpkin seeds. You can just munch on pumpkin seeds if you like pumpkin. I'm not a big pumpkin eater, but right now you can just about get pumpkin in anything in the fall. We go to anger. How do we handle anger? Oh my God, what has happened to my life? Is this where it should be? Do I feel like I'm in this all by myself? Just as I felt that day at my sister's house, but it was as simple as a gesture to let me know that I wasn't in this by myself. We feel like it's a thankless job in everything we do for our husband, our wives, our children, our elderly parents, our job, that nobody is sitting there patting us on the back. We get the crumbs that are left over after everything else we've given to everyone else. When we clean the table at night and we're brushing the crumbs off the table, we look and we go, this is what I'm getting, are these crumbs. It makes us angry. We feel frustrated. And the more anger, the more bitter we get, and the more less likely to change if that doesn't change. Grief. I wanted to cry my heart out for my mom. This brilliant woman who could do a crossword puzzle and nothing flat, knitted beautifully, needlepoint, wrote a cookbook, all of this, and she was losing it all. And then thinking to myself, life is not what you thought it would be at this point in time. You feel guilty for feeling that way. You feel guilty for the anger, the stress, all of it. And then the long goodbye. We've heard that term before from Nancy Reagan when Ronald Reagan was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It starts from the diagnosis to death. We're starting to say goodbye to our loved one the day we hear the diagnosis. And each day, a little bit more is taken away from us. And that they are not recognizing us, it's affected their speech, their personality that we love so much. Caregivers and family become strangers, as does the individual with dementia. Joy. There is something to look forward to. Look for it in the small things. It may be as simple as your child bringing you a clover of flowers from outside. It may be as simple as your elderly parent you're caring for lighting up when you walk in a room. Every day after work, I would walk in my mom. She had an apartment on the side of our house, and I'd walk in her apartment, and her eyes would get big. I knew she recognized me. I knew it. And I would have this little saying, "Oh, la mama, oh, la mama," and she would repeat it after me, "Oh, la mama." Well, I brought her joy for that moment, and she surely brought me joy for that moment, and it put a smile on my face. So it's always going to be in the little bitty things. It may not be big things right now, but it's going to be there in the small things, and we have to look for it. Laughter. Laughter is so important. We had a conference years ago with Alzheimer's, and they had this laugh therapist that came. That's what he was called, a laugh therapist. And I'll never forget this guy. Chose this little guy in the front row. And I knew the man, so I knew he wasn't a plant because he went to a lot of functions for Alzheimer's. And he told him to stand up. And he said, "When you get frustrated, what do you do?" And the guy said, "I just stay frustrated." And he said, "Well, what I want you to do right now is I want you to stand right here, and I want you to think of something funny, and I want you to laugh." And the guy said, looked at him real strange. He said, "No, I just want you to kind of start a laugh." So the little guy kind of goes, then he goes, and he starts laughing louder and louder. And finally, after a minute or two or so, the guy says, "Okay, you can stop." And the little guy said, "I don't want to." And he said, "Sir?" And he said, "This is the most I've laughed in 10 years of taking care of my wife with Alzheimer's." This laugh therapy was something I knew this man was going to go home and do. So when you feel frustrated for the day and things are terrible, like Jamie or anyone walks in their home, the kids are running around going crazy, your husband's wondering where supper is, one kid has a ball game, you have a meeting that night or whatever, and you're trying to figure out how in the world are we going to do all of this, do one thing, just stop. Go in the bathroom, look in a mirror, and start laughing. Laugh for a minute, laugh for 10 seconds, do whatever it is you can do. Go back outside, and I promise you, you will look at things differently. Ever since that guy talked about this, I've done it several times, and it works. It works better than counting to 10 before you sit there and want to hit somebody. So try laugh therapy. Understanding that we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. And also I want to say that bringing joy for the moment to your loved one or your individual you're caring for means more than anything in the world. And I'll remember one day I was in a social worker's office at Alzheimer's Services, and she had this saying on a bulletin board. It said, "Even if this illness took her memory away from me, it didn't take the memory of her away from me." She may not remember who I am or he, but I remember who they are. So we bring joy to them for the moment. It may not be a lasting joy, but it is for the moment. Gifts to myself to distress my life by Jean Gatz. This lady is from Baton Rouge. She wrote a book about caregiving and everything. She says, "Tear off your life script. Life isn't perfect, and neither am I. Acknowledge my limitations and take care of myself in mind, body, and spirit. And again, make time for joy." Am I doing something wrong, Al? I'm sorry. What can we change? You cannot always be in control of change, but you are in control of the attitude you choose to deal with change. That's in the book, Who Moved My Cheese by Dr. Spencer Johnson. And if you haven't read it and you have a lot of change going on in your life right now, I suggest you read it. It's very, very good. Remember, balance. Like Jamie said, trying to balance is our goal. For most of us, our lives are in constant imbalance. Remember in The Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi said, "You must find balance, Daniel." It may not always work, but we're striving to get where we do have balance. It's not going to always be that way, but if we continue to strive for it, we can sometimes find it. Set realistic goals. Understand we're going to make mistakes. Stay connected to your spouse, significant other, family, and friends. One thing my husband and I did do is try to find time for ourselves. And he was working out of town at the time in New Orleans, and I could go and meet him on Wednesday nights. And that was like our date night. It was just he and I. It made a huge difference in our lives. And I would suggest that you try that. I think on a Sunday evening or Sunday night, when you know what your schedule is for the week, when you know when the ball games, the meetings, who's working late, who's not working, whatever, you can sit there and carve in some time for you and your spouse. I think it's very, very important. And I think it doesn't matter. Just leave your home, have a babysitter for the other kids or let them babysit. Have someone with your elderly parents where you're not going to be called or whatever, and take a couple of hours together and spend that time with no outside influence or distractions or anything. It's very important. Work on improving your appearance. Set time for your children and your parents on that Sunday evening. Set that up like Jamie seems to have done and worked out a good schedule for herself and for her family. Do a girls' night out or a guy's night out, but I will tell you, do not ever let it take over date night. Nothing is more important than the time you and your spouse can spend together. Self-care with your prayer, your meditation. Try getting up 30 minutes before like Jamie does. Have that quiet time just for you and where you can take a deep breath, pray, meditate, just think. Exercise, exercise, laugh, and laugh. What can we change? Again, we can learn to say yes to the help that people want to offer. When someone offers you help and it's a legitimate offer, take it. Don't think, oh no, I got it. I can handle it. I can do this. If somebody says, oh, hey, you call me when you need some help, okay, or something, that person probably doesn't mean to give you any help. But the person who says, hey, Jamie, I can take your kids to school for you that day. While you're in Houston with your mom, I'll take care of your kids, make sure they get where they need to get or whatever. That person wants to help. Don't shut them out. Whatever you do, you are not Superman or Superwoman. Learn to say no when needed. Oh, Jamie, or so-and-so, can you handle this, this committee at school or whatever? No, I tell you what, I can't. I really can't. Maybe in a couple of years I can, but right now, no, I've got more than I can handle. Watch that slow creeping of more responsibility coming into your life. Be able to recognize it and say, no, I can't do it. Seek professional help if it's needed. Don't be embarrassed by that at all. There are family counselors, people who deal with this. Alzheimer's Services has social workers, has support groups and programs. Seek this out. Find out who's there that can help you with all of this. Talk to your employer, because if your employer knows what you're facing and the challenges, then they'll be more empathetic to what you need and when you need to schedule time off. They probably going through some of the same things too, or have been through some of those things. So reach out to them. Again, try to prioritize, like Jamie said. When all else fails, take a step back and breathe and go do some laugh therapy. Taking care of you, that's taking care of your loved ones. Setting boundaries, emotional and financial assistance, especially with those. Rising financial burden for the middle-class American who's supporting their older children and their elderly parents who are not able to to save enough or have a retirement that would enable them to have someone help with their care. Always, always forgive yourself. If you make a mistake, you yell and scream, come back to it. Ask for help. Delegate when appropriate. And one of the things about always forgiving yourself, when you lie down in bed at night, ask yourself, did I do the best I could today? And if the answer is yes, then be at peace with that. If it's no, and you maybe didn't do something the way you think you should have, or you wanted to, or whatever, forgive yourself and know that you have tomorrow, and you'll do better tomorrow. The notebook. I wanted to talk to you. I did a lot of help with families and stuff, and I came up with this idea of, if you have brothers and sisters who are not helping and participating in the care of your elderly parent like you think they should, or you don't think your children are helping, your older children are helping at home as much as they can, sit at the table and have a notebook. List the things that you need help with. And if you can incorporate another family member to be the facilitator for this little meeting, do it, because they'll think that you're trying to dictate their lives. And then you look like the heavy and it gets counterproductive. But have the notebook with the list of things that you need help with, and just say, if anybody could write down what their help can be to help out with this situation, would you please, offer, what you can do. Then nobody's dictating it to them. You've given them the opportunity to be in control of what they can offer to help with. Now, if they write down something like, well, I can visit with mom an hour on Saturday mornings. Great. That's just what I needed. 1 hour out of a 24/7, Well, no, if you get angry with them and upset, then you've shut them off and you lose that help. But you could give them back the notebook and say, God, that's great, but could maybe you do something else? One of the things we had worked out with my mom was we stayed with her during the week at night, and we had a sitter on weekends, except 1 weekend a month, the sitter was off, and my sister from out of town came and stayed from Friday afternoon to Sunday nights. And so she always felt like she was doing her share. We thought she was doing her share, so it really worked out well. We have to be willing to open ourselves up to what people can do. If we start expecting more than people can do, we set ourselves up for failure. I came up with another term, the martyr daughter. We have to be careful we don't become that person where we're in this by ourselves, we refuse the help from outside, and we go, woe is me. Then they're the pigeon droppers. They're the kids that fly in for the weekend, tell you everything you're doing wrong, leave their droppings, and fly back off where they're from. And that's not helpful at all. Teach your older children to assist in the care of their siblings and in your elderly parents. We incorporated our college girls and high school girls in helping to care for mom and to sit with her. And we paid them, or they spent the night. Jamie did it for her mom, who had to teach the next day. And outside support. Remember, there's Charlie's Place through Alzheimer's Services. There's assistance with lunch and learns and any kind of conferences. If you're not on their mailing list, I would advise you to join their mailing list, where you can see all the things they have: Council on Aging, professional help, and support meetings. See how we're running time. Again, the taking care of you. Take advantage of the resources I just listed and the support for the elderly. Healthcare options. That could be sitters in the home, if they're able to afford it, nursing home, or assisted living. Whatever, look into those. See, sometimes they can be more affordable than you think they are. There's adult daycare. Charlie's Place is absolutely fabulous, and it's supposed to be respite for you as the caregiver. The PACE program through Our Lady of the Lake. Use transportation, either from neighbors, family, or public transportation sometimes for your loved ones. There's a program, MD to You programs, where an MD could come to the home if a patient is not able to leave the home, if they're totally homebound, bedridden. There's also nurse practitioners that can do home visits through home health. Video visits with your doctor, which we know very well now because of COVID, in which we've had to do. Home health, hospice. Those are wonderful programs. We didn't get hospice for my mom because I just didn't know enough about it. Educate yourselves, be proactive instead of reactive. Know what you can use and take advantage of. Again, the support groups in the 10 parish area that Alzheimer's Services serves, there are support groups everywhere. And these are a wonderful thing where you can see people who are in the same boat you're in, offer suggestions, you can learn new ways of handling things, you can support one another. Kind of works like Al-Anon and AA, and it's a wonderful program. Educate yourself and your siblings and your parents' finances. Know what money they have, what they don't have. What do they have a long-term care policy? Do they have a living will? Power of attorney needs to be done. One of the things with my mom, we were all sitting in the room, she was in bed, and we were all talking about a living will and not realizing she could hear what we were saying. Someone brought up a feeding tube, and I said, oh, I think Mama would kill us if we put a feeding tube in her. And all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, she says, I worked hard to get to heaven. Don't interfere with the process. I will never forget it. We all looked at each other and said, we have a living will. And it helped us tremendously when it came to end-of-life issues. Eleanor Roosevelt said, to handle yourself, use your head. To handle others, use your heart. Marilyn Monroe said, I'm selfish, impatient, a little insecure. I make mistakes. I'm out of control, and at times hard to handle. But if you can't handle me at my worst, you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best. I thought that was good. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world. Rosalind Carter quoted this. Those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. I hope this provided some help, some light to the daunting task of taking care of everyone. And remember, to make the cheese, the lettuce, the pickles, and the tomatoes. And if anybody asks you, just tell them you're making your sandwich. Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody had some questions.
Thank you, Mary Ann, and thank you, Jamie. That was a wonderful presentation. If anybody has any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them down below in the chat box. And so, Mary Ann, we do have a little bit of extra time. Would you and Jamie like to maybe go over some of those reflection questions and get some input from our participants on those?
Yes, I think that'd be very good, Ellen.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the first question in the chat box. So Mary Ann's first reflection question is, what is your greatest strength? And so if anybody has an answer to that or would like to provide Mary Ann with some input on that, please let us know what you think. Jamie, did you have any insight on that?
I guess I got to answer what I think my greatest strength is. Probably it's a couple of things. I think compassion is one. And then I think the other thing that I'm really good at is organization. But all in all, about caregiving, I mean, just having the sense of compassion. It's definitely a good strength to have. And then the other question was, what is one thing you would change in your life if you could? I'm sure that we can all think about that. I was talking, I call her Meme, last week about this, and I think I would have spread my kids out a little bit more, but it's too late for that. So just to be able to have, you know, more, I guess they'd all be kind of doing different things that, and have more time.
And I think what I'm most grateful for is definitely my family, and I probably would all say that, but that they were able to give me the support I needed, and that helped me tremendously. So I think if we can take anything from today, it would be to do that, to help your family, to help your family members and support them as much as you can. I don't think COVID has helped any of us as far as being locked down and getting out and being able to do the things that we love so much. And I think the amount of loneliness and depression has increased, especially when we had the shutdown and we couldn't visit our loved ones like we wanted to, especially those in a nursing home that had to add to that stress. So, you know, if we could change anything in our lives, I may not have been angry sometimes as much and would have known a little bit more about this caregiving and sandwich generation that I knew when I was taking care of my mom in the 90s.
Thank you both so much. And we're getting a lot of good, sweet comments and compliments for you guys in the question box. Now, we do have a question. It says, as nurses, what strategies can you share to help nurses who are having trouble bathing their loved ones?
To help with bathing their loved one?
Yeah, so maybe if people, caregivers. So as nurses, what strategies can you share to help caregivers at home who are having trouble with their bathing their loved ones?
Well, with Alzheimer's and dementia, paranoia is a huge thing. And I'm not sure if the loved one you're taking care of is bedridden or ambulatory and able to get to the bathroom. But one of the things we always told our caregivers, if they're very fearful of water, I don't know why, I guess it's fearful of being able to drown and not being able to understand the concept of the faucet and everything. So what we tell them is to have the bathroom prepared ahead of time. If it needs to be warm, and the towels and their clothing, everything there and ready to go. So that when you walk in, you're not busy leaving them in the bathroom by themselves. You're with them constantly. If they're bedridden, we talk about how you can, with the rolling and the towels underneath and the blue pads, and bathing them in bed like that. Or if they're sitting in a chair and you have to give them a bed bath, then when it comes to their feet, get them in the chair and put their feet soaking in a little basin and talking to them the whole time, rubbing them. That physical contact gives them the security they need. We don't want to walk in and say, time for bath, move it, let's get it going here. I don't have much time. We want to make this something enjoyable to them, to try to help them with the fear they have and the paranoia. And one of the biggest things too is if you saw them one day and you get there the next day and they're in the same clothes and there's no dirty towels, you can kind of figure out their hygiene may be lacking and they may need help.
Great answer. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it for the questions that we have so far. Is there anything else you guys want to share before we sign off for today?
I just think that the comparison of Jamie and I and the years difference tells us that you can be in a sandwich generation at just about any point in time. My local priest, we're talking today, and he's a pastor of our parish. His mother is having some possible problems with dementia. His brother who lives with her had a stroke, lives out of town, and he's trying to juggle his job, seeing them, making sure they're being cared for. He has one brother who lives near the parents and feels guilty that he's not doing his share. And we talked about that today. We have to be real careful of that guilt. If the guilt fits, then, you know, I can't say much about that. If you're doing what you're supposed to do and as best you can, try to alleviate yourself of that guilt, knowing that you're doing the best you can and you've done the most you can. But constantly, those slices of bread coming at you can be really at any stage in your life. And that's why it's so important for us to take care of ourselves, because we're not going to be able to handle anything, even at our job, even with our neighbors or anybody, our social lives or anything. So it's real important. It's not selfish. It's not self-serving. It is to get you to where you need to be in life and work every day at it.
Thank y'all so much. And I've saved all these comments everybody's put in the chat box for you guys, so I'll share them with y'all later. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. This was a wonderful presentation. So many helpful tips people can take home and, you know, start using today in the care for their loved ones. So thank you both so much for your time. And we hope to see you guys next month for our next Lunch and Learn. So Thank y'all. Everybody have a nice day.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Alan. Thank you for having us.